Good morning. We'll call this subcommittee to order for Senate Joint Resolution 21. I'll make a couple of opening comments and then I'll allow you, Senator Celsi, the opportunity to make some opening comments. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your flexibility in coming to this chamber, and thank you to the House for allowing us to utilize this room. We have distributed an amendment for those who want a copy of the amendment after the meeting. There's a bunch of copies up here at the front table. We will not be voting on the amendment. It's by way of information. It will be a committee amendment that we will take up in the committee process. With that, I just again want to welcome all of you here. Senate Joint Resolution 21 is a proposed amendment to the Iowa Constitution. The need for this bill is the result of a decision of the Iowa Supreme Court that handed down the ruling on June 29, 2018. In the case of Planned Parenthood of the Heartland versus Reynolds, the court struck down a law that would have required abortion providers to provide a 72-hour waiting period before completing an abortion. Unfortunately, the court usurped the legislative branch in that decision and actually invented a fundamental right to an abortion. Any plain reading of our state constitution reveals no such right. For over 160 years of our state's history, no one has ever suggested that somewhere in the Constitution there was this right. In effect, the Iowa Supreme Court amended Iowa's Constitution. They overstepped their authority in that decision. I am not alone in that opinion. In fact, current Justices Mansfield and Waterman expressed their objection in a profound dissenting opinion. In that dissent, these two justices also expressed their concern that the majority might be laying the groundwork for taxpayer funding of abortion. Many Iowans, regardless of their thoughts on this issue, strongly object to taxpayer supporting of abortion. This proposed resolution affirms that there is no constitutional requirement for taxpayer funding of an abortion. Senate Joint Resolution 21 is needed to correct this unfortunate overreach by 5 unelected judges and restore to the people and their elected legislators the sole right to amend the Constitution of our state. Fellow members, regardless of your position on the practice of elective abortion, I ask you to please support Senate Joint Resolution 21 because the people of Iowa, not unelected judges, should decide how Iowa regulates abortion. Thank you. Senator Celsi.
Thank you, Senator Chapman. Good morning, and welcome to all Iowans who came to express their opinions here today. This is the one and only time that a public expression of opposition or support of an amendment to our Constitution will be allowed. It speaks volumes to me that the notice for this meeting was requested from my clerk barely in time to meet the 24-hour notice handshake agreement that we currently have. But the notice was not received through the normal channels by Senate staff, the lobby, or the public due to technical malfunction. When asked to move the meeting to a more amenable time so that more members of the public, those who would be most affected by this law, the suggestion was rejected by the majority. It's a sad day for us when we have 4 large public meetings for sports betting here at the Capitol and only 1 poorly noticed public meeting in a small room for such a consequential one here today. The Iowa Constitution has been updated a number of times in our state's history. In every circumstance, it was to update and modernize, right a wrong, or expand the rights of our citizens. This amendment would take rights away. And that is the wrong direction for Iowans. Public poll after public poll affirms that our constituents trust pregnant Iowans to make decisions about their own bodies with the advice of their physicians, their partner, and their God. In contrast, if approved, this constitutional amendment seeks to take away bodily autonomy and privacy. The Supreme Court recently elevated its recent decision to include the phrase "strict scrutiny applies to the right to an abortion. That means that this right is so important that any attempt to diminish this right should be considered a very serious encroachment on individual rights. Some Republicans in the Senate are determined to continue this war on pregnant Iowans, to stand directly between an individual who is making a serious and consequential decision for themselves and their family. These senators want to metaphorically gown up and come right into the surgical suite and tell that trained physician and the person giving birth and their family that they know better. They get to make those decisions. My Senate Democratic colleagues and I are standing up to say, no way, not on our watch. We have a serious maternal health crisis on our hands. More than 30 labor and delivery departments have closed around our state. There are serious shortages of obstetricians around the state. Options for prenatal care are shrinking. Instead of focusing on these solvable problems, Republicans are choosing instead to focus on a long odyssey of restricting rights through a constitutional amendment and a public vote. Iowans deserve public servants who listen to their needs and respond. Iowans from all over the state are asking me to help maintain their rights. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Smith, do you have any opening comments?
I'll reserve my closing comments.
Okay. So in practicality, here's what we're going to do. If someone who is in favor of the constitutional amendment would come forward, please sit here on the right side. We will have someone who is opposed on the left side, and we will alternate back and forth between those who are in support and those who are opposed. Martin Cannon, I welcome you to the table. I believe you want to have a few words. We will try to keep track of time and give equal time to those who want to speak. If whoever's wanting to be opposed, go ahead and come up here and start kind of lining up, if you would, and that way we just keep this meeting flowing. We do have a time limit, but Martin, go ahead and state your name and then proceed. Thank you.
Good morning, Senator Chapman, to the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity. Can you hear me okay? Good morning, and thank you for having me here today. My name is Martin Cannon. I'm one of several senior counsel with the Thomas More Society. I defended the heartbeat law enacted by the people of Iowa through their elected representatives and their elected governor. That law was struck down when the unelected justices, 5 of them, of our Supreme Court, discovered, invented, inserted into the Iowa Constitution a fundamental right to abortion where it had never previously existed. That effectively, for all practical purposes, took the matter of abortion out of your consideration, and forever. But through this nation's history and through the state of Iowa's history, the definition of homicide in all its forms, the prohibitions on it and the circumstances under which it is justified, have been a matter for legislatures. And plainly, the constraints on the killing of a fully human, plainly living, unborn child belong there also. The amendment in question does not prohibit abortion. It simply retains among the people the right to debate that question and pass laws accordingly. No one should be afraid of that. On the other hand, if we simply accept the court's overreach, we relegate ourselves, us, you, to passing half measures on this and any other issue, and then crawling across the street and begging the court's acceptance. The amendment in question is a reminder to the court that it gets its powers from us, and it gets its limitations from us also. To retain our dominant role in our self-governance, it is imperative that all of you, Democrat, Republican, pro-life, pro-choice, support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. We kept that to about 2 minutes and 30 seconds. We'll continue to try to go off of that. I'm not going to be hard fast on it, but we'll try to give equal time. So please state your name.
My name is David Sikelka. I am the Senior Minister at Urbandale United Church of Christ, and I thank the committee for the opportunity to speak here today. I keep hearing language about this bill that suggests that it is up to the legislature to determine what our rights are. And we also have a long history of saying that our rights are not up for a vote. When the founders of our country circulated the Constitution, people bristled at the lack of protections for rights. And over the history of our country, the courts have determined what that means. You do not have the primary role in that. The legislature is a part of our system of balances. There are equal roles for legislative, executive, and judicial branches. And so I represent a church that has not a unanimity on the issue of abortion, but what we have decided long before I ever came to that church was that the best way for us to provide for the health and well-being of our members is to provide adequate, fact-based, faith-based sex education for our middle schoolers. And we've been doing it for a long time, more than 20 years as far as I can tell. And I always hesitate to say this out loud because I'm afraid I'm going to jinx it. And I recognize that not everybody in my congregation tells me every aspect of their private lives, so it may not, in fact, be true. But I am not aware of any high school girl who has gotten pregnant during that time. Now, if we're going to argue about this, if we're going to have these kinds of discussions, let's focus on things that really work, that really do make a difference in people's lives. I think that it is wrong-headed to focus on what rights are not in our Constitution. We have rights, and they are not granted to us by the legislature. They are granted by the Constitution. And to begin to chip away at those by adding codicils to our Constitution that limit rights is a dangerous precedent. How many of your rights are you willing to add to this list of things that are not in the Constitution? I think that we can do better. I think we can focus on things that will enhance the well-being of our citizens. Things like the governor's emphasis on eliminating the child care cliff effect. Think what an impact that will have for people who are trying to decide whether or not to raise a child. We can focus on things like providing for education in our schools that includes sexuality and relationships and how those things intertwine. We can make sure that reproductive health is adequately funded so that people have access to contraception. Let's work on and focus on the things that are going to make a positive impact and not be miffed that the judicial branch has taken a position that we disagree with. Thanks.
Thank you. I think I actually probably, due to time, I am going to limit 2 minutes. I think we have a number of people that want to speak, so I'm not trying to be rude, but I will cut you off at 2 minutes, okay?
Okay. My name is Maggie DeWitte, and I'm the Executive Director of Iowans for Life and the spokesman for the Coalition of Pro-Life Leaders. I am speaking here this morning in strong support of SJR21. I believe the people of Iowa and not unelected judges of the state Supreme Court should decide how Iowa regulates abortion. These radical judges took that right away from all Iowans, and thereby preventing common sense protection for women and children. While what these judges did was really even more extreme than Roe versus Wade. And Iowa isn't alone in trying to pass a constitutional amendment. 4 other states, Alabama, West Virginia, Tennessee, and Rhode Island, have restored legislative authority Iowa needs to follow the example of these states and put creating law back into your hands, our elected legislators. This amendment will simply restore our state constitution back to what it was. It will not prohibit abortion, but rather allow our elected representatives and the people of Iowa to make decisions regarding the health and safety and well-being of its citizens. This is an amendment that should have bipartisan support. Regardless of your party affiliation, no legislator would be in favor of the judicial branch taking away what elected officials do, create law. We need to send a strong message to those unelected judges that they cannot legislate from the bench. It's time to take back the rights of the legislature and the rights of we the people by passing this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep, go ahead and hit the button. There you go.
I'm Kenneth Briggs. I'm a pastor. I've been a pastor for 52 years in the United Church of Christ. I've also served as an Air Force chaplain for 17 of those years. I appreciated when the court made the decision they did. I was very, very concerned. I've worked with too many situations over the years that if women did not have the freedom to make decisions about their bodies, it could have been disastrous for their lives. One woman that I remember was a young woman in school, teenager, and she just made a mistake. If she'd had to go ahead and have that baby, it would have totally changed her life. She wouldn't have gone to college. She wouldn't have done a lot of things in her life, which I've kept track of her. I had to help her go to a certain place where she could get an abortion at the time. But she ended up with a college degree and a master's degree and has a high-powered job in technology and has raised a family of 3 boys, and she did have one daughter that died 6 months after she was born, a sudden infant death syndrome. She's lived a good life and been a good parent. I've had an older lady that had a family with 5 kids. She didn't intend to have any more children.
Okay, thank you. Do we have another?
I'm sorry, nobody else was cut off.
No one else has hit the 2-minute mark. So when we hit 2 minutes, we will cut them off. If you'll go ahead and turn that mic off, we can just hear a little bit better, and turn that mic on. Thank you. Hit the mic. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Joan Thompson, and I'm here today representing the Iowa Catholic Conference and here to present a statement from our bishops. We support an Iowa constitutional amendment to clarify a right to abortion is not guaranteed by the state of Iowa Constitution. The Iowa State Court, the Supreme Court, in a June 2018 decision, struck down the law requiring a waiting period before an abortion is performed. In pursuit of that decision, the court claimed the Iowa Constitution provided for a fundamental right to abortion. Such a claim is groundless, given that for 115 years, the same state of Iowa Constitution served as the basis for a legislative ban on abortion, except to save the life of the mother. The dignity of the human person is the foundation of our moral vision for society. We recognize that each person is created in the image and likeness of God, and hence direct attacks on innocent persons are never acceptable. This is why abortion is such an important issue. We believe it is important to make this amendment to the Iowa Constitution. This is a question of the common good. We can help pregnant women in need, the men who fathered these children, and families in distress without recourse to the violence of abortion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Tanya Keith, and I am here to ask you to end this discussion because it hurts Iowa women. I am here today because of a baby that I very much wanted. I had 2 children and desperately wanted a third. I was 41 years old and feeling like I was running out of time. I was able to get pregnant, and at 10 weeks went in fully expecting good news. And the technician said, "Oh, your baby is only measuring 6 weeks." And I said, "Oh, is that a problem?" Like, yeah, it's a problem. I had been so sure that that pregnancy was healthy. I couldn't believe the news, and I actually waited an entire week because I so desperately wanted this third baby for my family. I went back in a week later after a grueling week of emotional soul-searching and hope and prayer, and that pregnancy was not going to continue. The baby had actually gotten smaller. I was left with the decision to wait for my body to deal with the remains of that pregnancy on its own, at the risk of my own health, safety, and welfare, and my ability to have the positive mental health to care for my 2 children, or to have a medical procedure called a DNC to help my body heal and hopefully go on to have the baby that is now my third baby, my healthy daughter. I had that DNC, and it was hard, but I did it, and I was so grateful that that option was there for me. When I got my bill for that procedure, it did not say DNC. It said, in all capitals, abortion. And I have been a Planned Parenthood advocate my entire life, and I burst into tears, and I called the billing office, and I told them that they had to change my bill because I had not had an abortion. I had had a DNC. I was saving my family. I was saving my health. I was protecting my fertility and my health, safety, and welfare.
Thank you. Your time has expired.
I ask you to vote no for this, because when you have this conversation, you are criminalizing the process of abortion that is for the health, safety, and welfare of our children and families. It is not.
I'm gonna stop you now. There are other people that want to speak. I've given you plenty more than 2 minutes.
But the first speaker had 2.5 minutes, so I'm just getting my 30 seconds. So
you got more
I
than
appreciate that.
Thank you.
I'm also a business owner, and this is going to make it harder for me to attract good workers to work in my business because people don't want to work in a state that is backwards. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just, again, please be respectful of everyone's time. We have limited time. We do have other meetings that will convene here shortly, and so we're trying to get everyone in. Everyone has an opportunity to speak, so please be respectful of everyone's time here. Go ahead. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Caitlyn Dixson, and I am the Executive Director of Iowa Right to Life. I am proud to be with many in the pro-life movement to voice our strong, unified, and unwavering support of the Protect Life Amendment. It's time, and unfortunately it's necessary, Governor Reynolds correctly declared in her Condition of the State address. It is necessary because unelected judges have crafted and enacted their own set of laws circumventing you, the legislators, and us, the people. This amendment is what pro-life Iowans want and what all Iowans need. A voice not only for themselves, but also for the preborn. An opportunity to amend our Constitution and put the power back in our elected legislators' hands to create our laws. We have seen that the climate today is pro-life. Iowa deserves to have laws that can change and evolve over time to reflect the thoughts of Iowans. We have seen how true that is over the years with adoption of laws like the Heartbeat Bill or the 20-week bill, both making way to the governor's desk where they were signed into law. It took an act of blatant judicial overreach to completely overturn that 72-hour provision within the 20-week bill, which then led directly to the overturning of the heartbeat bill, going directly against what Iowans want. I urge you to pass the amendment through all phases so that Iowans can have a choice. I'm going to say that again, so that Iowans can have a choice, so they can go to their polling booths and declare that the state constitution is not subject to unelected judges deciding the law, so that Iowans can serve as the most important check in our system of checks and balances. Thank you.
Thank you. It's on. You're okay.
Hi, my name is Jordan Beach. I'm a resident of Urbandale, and this is what I have to say about this. So reproductive health care in Iowa has been under partisan attack for far too long, and this has to stop. Our rights do not cease to exist the moment I become pregnant. I am more than a walking womb, and so are the people in your life who may become pregnant. We deserve the right to decide what is best for ourselves and our families without interference or undue influence. Iowa politicians would do better to improve the quality of and access to healthcare options instead of limiting them based on nothing but personal beliefs. The purpose of a constitutional amendment is to establish rights, not deny them. This perverse weaponizing of our state constitution would mean it no longer applies equally to all Iowans, instead depriving those who may become pregnant of their most fundamental rights. This is one of the most extreme attacks on reproductive rights in Iowa history, and if it passes, it will deprive us of the right to make private healthcare decisions compatible with our own circumstances. Under the Geneva Convention, forced pregnancy is defined as a crime against humanity, alongside rape and sexual slavery. The United Nations classifies the denial of reproductive health services as a form of discrimination. If this amendment passes, the Iowa Constitution would no longer protect the right to end the pregnancy under any circumstance, not even rape, incest, or the endangerment of one's life or health. Iowa politicians are trampling over our personal freedom and bodily autonomy in their fanatical haste to attack Roe versus Wade. They have forgotten their oaths of office and are not representing their constituents as they have sworn to do. I ask you to vote no on this amendment and to end the discussion, which is completely unnecessary.
Good morning. My name is Laura Limmex, and I am the director of Restored by Grace, an organization that comes alongside women and families dealing with the loss of a child due to abortion. This past August, my husband and I volunteered 32 hours over 8 days in the Varied Industries building at the State Fair. We had discussions with hundreds of people at all ends of the spectrum on the issue of abortion. What we found was that the overwhelming majority agreed that the opinion written by the Iowa Supreme Court in the Planned Parenthood versus Reynolds was unreasonable. They believe the people of Iowa, and not the unelected judges of the state Supreme Court, should decide how Iowa regulates abortion. Furthermore, we also found the majority believes the Constitution of Iowa should only be modified by vote of the people of Iowa, and it should protect women and children from late-term abortion. As a post-abortive woman, I know that little girl in my womb, she was a baby, and both she and I deserve to be protected by Iowa law. I thank you, Senator Chapman, for standing up for the rights of all Iowans.
Thank you. We probably have time for maybe 3 more on the opposition and 2 more on the for the amendment. Thank you.
I'm Daniel Zeno, Policy Director for the ACLU of Iowa. Whether people in this room like it or not, abortion is a constitutional right. It is protected under the state constitution and under the federal constitution. What this bill does is takes away a fundamental right under the Iowa Constitution. No matter how many times legislators or proponents of the bill say it or imply it, this bill is not about making the Constitution neutral. An abortion bill that's neutral? I think not. Through this bill, the Iowa legislature is seeking to take away a fundamental right from Iowans. In its June 2018 decision, the Iowa Supreme Court, the constitutional head of the separate yet equal branch of Iowa's government, the judicial branch, the branch of government that the Constitution vests with the ultimate authority and obligation to ensure that no law passed by the legislature impermissibly invades an interest protected by the Constitution, recognized that women have a fundamental right to an abortion. The court wrote powerfully, autonomy and dominion over one's own body goes to the very heart of what it means to be free. Instead of recognizing women's equality and freedom, the legislature continues its relentless attacks on Iowa women. Thankfully, the silver lining here is that despite the efforts of the anti-abortion movement to ban abortions, shame people for seeking care, and despite the politicians who are part of this concerted national effort, abortion is legal in all 50 states, including in Iowa, and we intend to keep that way. We intend to keep it that way. We urge you to vote no on Senate Joint Resolution 21 on behalf of all Iowans and protect the fundamental rights of Iowans to live the lives that they believe they should live. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Terry Amann. I'm pastor of Church of the Way here in Des Moines. As a minister of the gospel, I rise in favor of the amendment. My wife and I have been married 14 years, and we were having difficulty getting pregnant. And then after the 15th year, she surprised me, and we found out we were pregnant. She wasn't feeling well. We got in the car to drive to the doctor's office, and we were in a terrible car accident. And they took her to the hospital, and it sent her into labor. And so I crawled into the emergency room and then went up to see her so I could be with her those 33 hours. And our baby was born. It was a little girl. And I'm looking at him like, holy buckets, she's a baby. And the doctor held up the placenta because you want to see if there's any trauma from the car accident. And the colors and the beauty, and you see childbirth up close, and you know, this is the hand of God at work. And the scripture tells us that children in the womb are fearfully and wonderfully made by the Lord. It's incredible. Why would we ever want to stop that? What I'm asking you today, to consider that what we're trying to do is give everybody the gift of life, the same gift that we've all had. And if we have the gift of life, we have the opportunity to experience the love of God. And so I encourage you to support this amendment, a step in a long process to give everybody the gift of life. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Connie Ryan. I'm the Executive Director of Interfaith Alliance of Iowa and Action Fund. We represent thousands of Iowans across the state, people of faith and no faith, who believe in and are standing up for every woman's right to control her body and the healthcare decisions that impact her life. The constitutional right of women to make our healthcare decisions, upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court, is being attacked with this amendment. The only arguments to take away a constitutionally guaranteed right for a woman to control her own body are, as you just heard, from a narrow interpretation of one religious belief. To be clear, you have every right to hold that religious belief. You just cannot use that religious belief to infringe on the fundamental freedoms and rights of other people. If you don't want to listen to me, listen to the words of one of our strong constitutional leaders. Quote, "Let us strive to find new and ingenuitive, burdensome government regulations, free to raise their families and live their lives without the fear of government intrusion, free to exercise their individual fundamental rights without government sanction or approval." This is a quote from Representative Matt Winschittle from his opening remarks of the 2020 session just 3 days ago. Free to exercise their individual fundamental rights without government sanction or approval. Women have the freedom and constitutional right to make the best health care decisions for them, including the right to a safe, legal abortion. I ask you to oppose this effort to infringe on the freedoms and the rights of Iowa women. Thank you.
Thank you. This will be the concluding speaker for the in favor, and then we'll hear one more since we started with who is in favor. We'll hear one more from the opposition. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Chuck Curley with the family leaders, and this is Madeline Crook with the family leaders. She'll be reading our statement. We support this, and we thank you for bringing it.
The overwhelming majority of Iowans, if given the chance, would protect women and children from gruesome late-term and partial birth abortions. We, the people, would insist abortion clinics maintain basic safety standards. We can't imagine being forced to pay for elective abortions. But in 2018, judges stripped the right from all Iowans to determine reasonable abortion protections. Now, without this amendment, judges have the power and precedent to throw away common sense, ignore we the people, and practically dictate dangerous abortion policies that harm both women and their babies. No matter your view on abortion, that's wrong. We the people of Iowa and not unelected judges should decide how Iowa regulates abortion. This amendment is about far more than the abortion debate. By now, we've heard all the arguments about abortion, but there's one truth I can't argue away, and that most Iowans agree with. That little child in her mother's womb, she's a baby, and she deserves a birthday. But now, unelected extremist judges have decided no, she can be killed even up to her birthday. Iowans don't support that and have never voted for that. This amendment corrects those judges' radical ruling and allows Iowans to decide for themselves on reasonable abortion protections. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you for having us here today. My name's Jamie Birch Elliott. I represent Planned Parenthood North Central States and Planned Parenthood Advocates of Iowa. We are opposed to SJR21 and its amendment. And before I get started, I just want to make something very clear that infanticide is already illegal, period. So I just want to make sure that that clears the air there. But on the amendment, on this proposed constitutional amendment, what we see is that this will infringe on the freedom of Iowans. What we see is that this amendment would change the Iowa Constitution to actually take away basic rights instead of protecting them, and this will further threaten reproductive health. Iowa's Constitution, fortunately, has strong privacy protections that ensure our right to personal freedom. And this amendment weakens those protections by opening the door for politicians to pass burdensome, medically unnecessary restrictions on health care for women. This bill has the potential to prevent doctors from exercising their best medical judgment about a woman's health, which jeopardizes health care for women who are sometimes in very difficult situations, and some of those situations we've heard about today. This could also force Iowans to delay needed care or travel hundreds of miles to seek an abortion. Instead of limiting health care options, we need solutions that improve the health of Iowans and the reproductive health care decisions that are best for their situation. And this is particularly important when rates of maternal death have recently doubled in the state of Iowa. Iowa women must have the freedom to make decisions about their pregnancy in consultation with their doctor, and again, not politicians. But yet some politicians don't seem to recognize that every pregnancy is unique and some are complicated. A woman's health, not politics, should drive important medical decisions. This proposed constitutional amendment is one of the most extreme attacks on women's health in Iowa history, and if it passes, would take away Iowans' right to make the private health care decisions that are best for their own unique circumstances. Politicians need to step aside and trust and respect people to make the appropriate medical decisions for them and their family. Iowans deserve freedom from political interference in our personal lives, and we will not be fooled by politicians who want to insert themselves in what should be a private healthcare decision. Choosing whether and when to have children is a decision between a woman, her doctor, her family, and her faith, not politicians sitting at this table nor sitting here in Des Moines. And if this amendment passes, the Iowa Constitution would no longer protect a woman's right to end a pregnancy under any circumstance,
Okay,
including
thank
when...
you.
Can
Your
I finish
time
my
has
sentence?
Yep.
Thank you. Including when a pregnancy results in rape or incest, or when her health or life is in danger. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Senator Celsi, closing comments.
I'll keep my comments brief. I have a statement from former Senator Brace, his daughter's experience. It's very short. Our former Senate colleague, Chris Brace, shared the experience of his daughter's pregnancy last summer. Senator Brace's daughter experienced a loss of amniotic fluid at around 24 weeks, meaning that her baby's lungs and other vital organs would be harmed and her baby would not survive birth. Because of the cruel and medically unnecessary 20-week abortion ban passed by Republicans in this Senate in 2017, her doctors were not able to provide an abortion or induce labor. Her baby had a heartbeat but would never live on this earth. She was forced to continue the pregnancy, risking her own health, and knowing that her baby would suffer after birth. She was only able to receive the medical care she needed when sepsis set in and her life was at risk. This proposed constitutional amendment will put Iowa women's lives at risk and infringe on their freedom and fundamental rights. I know the real plan here is to ban safe and legal abortion in Iowa, and I'm opposed to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the discussion today. As a state senator, I pride myself on representing the people who elected me. This is why I run grassroots campaign and knock on tens of thousands of doors. Everything we do down here is about representing the people and making sure their voices are heard. What better way to hear from the people and where they stand on an issue than letting them vote on it? Let's talk about the process. This meeting is not the only time for a citizen to have input on this. We had a subcommittee last year and a committee process last year. The normal route takes 13 steps. A subcommittee process in the Senate, committee vote, floor vote. The same in the House. And then the people have a say at the general election. 125 legislators of the 150 will be on the ballot. They can vote all 125 legislators out of office if they'd like. And then we have to come back here again and have a subcommittee where the people can speak, a committee vote, and a floor vote in the Senate. And then we're going to have a House subcommittee vote where the people can speak, and a committee vote, and a floor vote. But here's the best part about it. The people will have the final say at the ballot box because the vote will go to the people. This is neutral language. If you want to look at it, it's a way to look at it is the people are going to decide, should 5 unelected judges have a final say in the judicial branch? It's really 7, but 5 of them voted for this. Or is it going to be the legislative, 150 duly elected representatives and senators, and the executive branch, the governor, duly elected? Who's going to have the final say? There's a reason in the preamble of the U.S. Constitution that the font size for "We the People" is so large. It's not because they started writing it and went, oh, we're going to run out of ink or we're going to run out of paper. They did it on purpose. They put "We the People" so large to send the message that they have the final say. This constitutional amendment empowers the people of Iowa and gives them a voice on this critically important issue. And for that reason, I support this constitutional amendment. I look forward to hearing from the people at the ballot box. They will have the final say, just the way it should be. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone who showed up today and who testified. I know some of you have come under difficult circumstances, and taking time out of your day to have your voice heard is important in our government process and how we go about legislating. There's an old quote that I'm reminded of as I sat here and listened to some of the testimony. and that is that truth must be repeated again and again because error is constantly being preached roundabout. And we heard a lot about abortion rights, but we didn't hear much about what this constitutional amendment actually does. I want to read the language of what's being proposed. Protection of life, to defend the dignity of all human life and to protect mothers and unborn children from efforts to expand abortion even to the day of birth. We, the people of the state of Iowa, declare that this Constitution shall not be construed to recognize, grant, or secure a right to abortion or to require the public funding of an abortion. We've heard that this amendment is somehow going to stop abortions overnight. That's not what this constitutional amendment does. What this constitutional amendment does do is it tells the judicial branch, who with the power of the ink pen, with the power of the gavel, that no longer will we allow them to rewrite our Constitution by one judicial decision. As we look at the judicial decision that we're talking about here today, the Chief Justice who wrote the majority opinion, in his words, not mine, his words, he says, our Constitution recognizes the ever-evolving nature of society, and thus our inquiry cannot be combined with the limited vantage point of the past. He then goes on to say, the Iowa Constitution is a living and vital instrument. Unlike statutes, our Constitution sets broad general principles. Its very purpose is to endure for a long time and to meet conditions neither contemplated nor foreseeable at the time of adoption. The irony in all of that is our Constitution was adopted on, I'm going to tell you here, September 3rd, 1857. Justice Cady relied on Article 1, Section 6, and Section 9 for his decision. And I reaffirm my proposal to anyone to go and look at Article 1, Section 6, and Section 9. I'll be at my desk. You can come and show me where there is a fundamental right under Article 1, Section 6, or 1, Section 9 to an abortion. You will not find it. It is the most misconstrued decision I have ever seen. September 3rd, 1857, our Constitution was adopted. And it was foreseeable what this particular issue, unlike what the Chief Justice had said at the time. I hold here the laws of Iowa, 7th General Assembly, 1858. Approved March 15th, 1858, feticide. And it goes on to say that every person who shall willfully administer to any pregnant woman any medicine, drug, substance, or thing whatever, or shall use or employ any instrument or other means with the intent thereby to procure the miscarriage of any such woman, unless the same shall be necessary to preserve the life of such woman, shall upon conviction thereof be punished by imprisonment in the county jail for a term not exceeding 1 year, and be fined in the sum not exceeding $1,000. Approved March 15th, 1858. 6 months within the ratification of our state constitution. To change our Constitution is a difficult process. It is a lengthy process. It's found under Article 10 of our state constitution. And nowhere under Article 10 does it grant the judicial branch the authority to rewrite our Constitution. It's not there. And that's exactly what happened. And that's exactly why we're proposing this constitutional amendment to rein in judicial activism. It is an enumerated power of the legislative branch to draft and create law, not the judicial branch. And for that reason, I'm going to propose that we sign off on this constitutional amendment with an amendment to move it forward into the committee process. Again, I want to thank everyone for coming today, and thank you for your respectful way in which you came to this meeting. Thank you.